and which are nothing to do with the degrees of knowledge to which the Quran refers. The majority of students do not even know that they are being conditioned, or what the nature of their conditioning is. The few who do realize what is going on either nevertheless choose to go along with it, or else they drop out. Of those who drop out, a few can overcome the inertia to wake up and look beyond the kafir conditioning process for real knowledge. Indeed, it is one of the characteristics of the kafir system, that is the Dajjal system, that whilst you are in it, that is, whilst the stare of mind which its conditioning process induces, whether by education or media, continues to prevail, it is virtually impossible to even conceive of any alternative to it. The worldview, that is, the version of the meaning of life, which is engendered and nurtured by the kafir, educational and media systems, is kufr. Only the one who is not content with this view, and who has rejected the system, is in a position to cut through all the misconceptions and disinformation with which he or she has been blinded, and to see what Islam really is in a position to begin to understand and follow the way of the Prophet Muhammad. May the blessings and peace of Allah be on him, who once asked Allah, "Teach me to see things as they really are." The kafir hospital system has in the last 50 years become an integral and important part of the producer-consumer process. It exists to keep people in working fit condition. Many of the illnesses with which it has to deal are the direct result of the way in which people live, and are obliged to live, by virtue of the way in which the consumer-producer process operates. The kafir system, that is, the Dajjal system, creates its own illnesses, thereby creating work for those who are employed in the hospital system. The hospital system is run as a business. Everyone is paid for what they do. The livelihood of a large number of people depends on other people being ill, and the way of life, which has evolved and developed as an inevitable result of the way in which the modern producer-consumer state is run, ensures that there are more than enough ill people to keep the hospital system busy and in business, thereby ensuring countless others, who supply the hospitals and doctors with the tools and medicines of their trade, steady and profitable employment. The capacity of the kafir system, that is, the Dajjal system, to create unnecessary jobs and meaningless activity in any sphere of life, is something almost to be marveled at. This is in marked contrast to the situation to be found in the simple village community living in fitra, or in a balanced Muslim community. Of course, there is illness in such communities, for illness is the manifestation of imbalance, and everyone loses balance at some time or other. But firstly, the healthy not only look after the sick, but also they know how to look after the sick, and secondly, they do not make a business out of it. Since these two kinds of communities do live more or less in harmony with existence, and since they know what to eat and what not to eat, and since they have a balanced way of life, it inevitably follows that there is far less serious illness around than in a kafir society, simply because there is far less imbalance. If the heart is at peace, it follows that there will be no illness which is caused by nervous strain, anxiety, or tension. If the correct food is eaten, then the illnesses which originate from the stomach, and most illnesses will not arise. If people really understand and accept the way things are, and if they know where they have come from and where they are going to, then it is extremely unlikely that they are going to be on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Life is very simple. It is simply a question of balance. The Prophet Muhammad was once sent some costly medicines from Egypt. He returned them with the message that his way of life was its own medicine, and the best of medicines. He was so finely balanced that his only major illnesses arose when people tried to poison him, whether by means of food or magic. The Prophet Muhammad, may the blessings and peace of Allah be on him, said that if the heart was well, then the body would be well, and that if the heart was ill, then the body would be ill. The heart is the center of one's being. It is the means by which we know the self and Allah, and whoever knows their self knows Allah. All the various outward ways of doing things which together comprise the pattern of life, embodied by the Prophet Muhammad, have an inward and beneficial effect on the heart. The heart is not at peace unless you worship Allah. Only by the remembrance of Allah is the heart made serene. The only way to worship and remember Allah in every single lived moment is by following the way of Muhammad, may Allah bless him and grant him peace. Like the kafir factory and educational systems, the kafir hospital system tends to be run like a production line. As automation has increased, it has become correspondingly more depersonalized. Medical staff are obliged, by the sheer number of people with whom they have to deal, not to become involved with their patients. It is easier to treat them as objects than as humans. Since most of the people who run the hospital system have usually been university conditioned, it usually follows that the vast majority of them have no real deep medical knowledge. Many of their so-called cures are only skin deep. In the same way that the university professors toy with ideas and their theoretical speculations, so the doctors experiment with drugs in their medication. Inevitably, the patient can become a human guinea pig. The final test for a new drug once no more can be learnt from trying it out on animals. One of their best medicines is the loving care of the nursing staff. Doctors are often obliged to experiment simply because they do not understand the nature of existence. Many so-called doctors today are even unaware of the basic knowledge, which is so important in the practice of medicine, that all matter is composed of varying combinations of the four elements, that is, air, fire, earth, and water. That these elements are respectively hot-wet, hot-dry, cold-dry, and cold-wet. That the body of a human contains four humors, that is, blood, black bile, yellow bile, and phlegm. That these humors are respectively hot-wet, hot-dry, cold-dry, and cold-wet. That all foods have their own medicinal properties and, depending on the elements from which they are formed, are hot, dry, cold, or wet in varying degrees and combinations. Illness occurs in the body when there is an imbalance of the humors. This imbalance can be corrected by taking the food which has the opposite qualities of whatever qualities the illness has, whilst at the same time refraining from the food which has the same qualities as the illness. The modern doctor often denies this approach, dismissing it as primitive, and preferring to rely on 21st century wonder drugs, even though they will eventually destroy his or her patient's immune systems, and accordingly their natural resistance to illness. Homeopathy, which is a complementary way of medicine to the natural way just described in that it treats like rather than with its opposite, is usually treated with the same disdain by the kafir practitioner, even though he or she accepts the very same principle when it is applied in the use of vaccines. Similarly, the ancient methods which are used to free the subtle energy flows in the body, such as acupuncture and shiatsu, are treated with suspicion. In reality, the kafir doctor's opinions as regards these enlightened ways of treating illness only mirror the reflection of their own ignorance in the matter. It is interesting to note that in order to ensure that the kafir medical view of treating illness predominates, the kafir legal system usually makes it illegal to practice as a doctor, unless you have the appropriate kafir medical qualifications and initials after your name. It is of course necessary to protect unsuspecting people from quacks and charlatans. But there have certainly been many instances where doctors with the profound knowledge of natural medicine have been discredited as impostors simply because they do not comply with the kafir norm, just as in the days of the British Raj and Lydian, who could speak Arabic, Persian, and Urdu fluently, and who knew the entire Quran by heart, would be classified as illiterate if he or she could not read and write English. This approach is typical of the kafir system, that is, the Dajjal system, as a whole. Any view or course of action which contradicts system kafir norm is rendered ineffective and of minimal influence, by making it illegal before the stage is reached where it might become effective. Once any action or approach to existence has been deemed to be against the law, then the weight of the whole kafir legal system can be used to squash it. In effect, the kafir system, that is, the Dajjal system, ensures that if you disagree with it, you may criticize it, but you may not actively try to change it. As far as surgery is concerned, There can be no doubt that as a result of recent advances in technology, coupled with the discoveries made during the Second World War, when patients were in plentiful supply, many wonders are performed, and many lives are either saved for the time being and improved, or otherwise enhanced. It is also equally clear that many of the operations carried out in the modern hospital system are unnecessary, while many of the operations which do appear necessary are needed to deal with ailments which are directly caused by the way in which people live in a kafir society. If the patients had had a balanced way of life in the first place, they would not have incurred the illness which caused them to arrive in the operating theater. If techniques did not need to be practiced and perfected, some operations would not take place. If sexual promiscuity was not an established social norm, then there would be no need for the thousands and thousands of abortions which are routinely performed every year. If ignorance about what is on the other side of death was not so prevalent, many elderly patients might choose to die a natural death at the end of their natural lifespan, rather than being encouraged to opt for a major operation in order to buy a little more time from which they might well never fully recover anyway. Once in the operating theater again, many patients are no more than guinea pigs. Let us see what this will do to him. Will this new technique work? One of the descriptions of the Dajjal in the hadith states that the Dajjal will cut a man in two, so that it seems that he is dead, and then put him together again, so that it seems that he is alive and well. This description aptly fits what goes on in many an operating theater, as well as being applicable to some of the psychological disorders, such as schizophrenia, which inevitably result from a kafir way of life. There can be no doubt, however, that good surgeons assisted both by skilled anesthetists and skillful theater staff do perform many invaluable operations, and that good doctors do heal many people, and that in the process many wonderful discoveries are made. Indeed, it should be emphasized that in all the various interlinking systems that comprise the kafir system, that is the Dajjal system, there are many good people who do good, and that any criticism of the system itself should never be mistaken as a criticism of such people. Life is a learning process, and whoever seeks knowledge will find it everywhere. Even the Pharaoh's wife, Asiya, was a believer. The ignorance which is often displayed by the manner in which the kafir medical profession treats physiological disease is only equaled by the lack of knowledge, which is evident in the way in which many psychiatrists attempt to deal with psychological disorders. Since they do not know the nature of existence, it follows that they do not know the nature of the human self. It follows that they do not know how to treat the ailments of the self. They have no unitary knowledge. They do not know how the universe and what it contains comes into being, nor how it goes out of being, nor how it appears to be in each moment between its birth and death. Since they have a fixed, as opposed to a dynamic, view of reality, it follows that they have a fixed idea of what normal is, and so anyone who does not fit that idea is considered abnormal, and accordingly is assaulted either physically or psychically, in an attempt to bring them within the bounds of that definition. Since at the very best, they only have a partial idea as to how the human self works, they are reduced to the barbaric practice of rendering the brain quiescent and ineffective, either by drugs and heavy sedation, or even by electric shock treatment, or lobotomy or laser gun bombardment. The fact that kafir psychiatrists concentrate on the mind, that is, on the contents of the head, in itself shows that they have completely missed the point, since it is the heart which requires attention. Recitation of the Quran is enough to still the heart and calm the mind, thereby rendering many of the kafir psychologists' approaches obsolete. The reason why many people in today's kafir societies suffer varying degrees and kinds of madness is because they try and figure out the nature of existence with their heads, when only the heart is capable of arriving at such an understanding. Some liken the heart to the sun and the head to the moon. The moon does not generate its own light. What light it has is reflected light from the sun. Once the heart has been illuminated by the remembrance of Allah, the intellect is then illuminated, and not before. Perhaps the greatest error of the kafir psychologist is to give reality to the illusory self, that is, the self which does not really exist. They give reality to what we think we are, or to what we think others think we are. To the people of real knowledge, this illusory self does not exist. It only appears to exist if an imagined reality is given to it, since whatever you imagine is real for you. If you cease to imagine anything, existence does not cease, but rather you see existence as it really is. You see, wherever you turn, the existent. Wherever you look, there is the face of Allah. There is no reality, only reality. In effect, the illusory self is nothing more than a solidification of events obscuring a light, which is the true. See the light of Allah. The kafir psychologist gives reality to that solidification of events, and not to the light which it obscures. That is why he or she is kafir. His or her action covers over the truth of the matter. By giving reality to what is unreal, and by refusing to give reality to the real, Allah, it follows that the kafir psychiatrist is not going to have any real success in the cures which he or she attempts to perpetrate, since whatever he or she does will almost inevitably be without reference to the true nature of existence, and will accordingly be out of harmony with it. The so-called cure of the kafir psychologist is imbalance piled on imbalance, darkness piled on darkness, the outward semblance of normality imposed on an inward stare of insanity. The mu'min doctor, and by this term, we do not mean a Muslim who has been subjected to the kafir educational conditioning process in the field of medicine, and who has accepted that conditioning. The real mu'min doctor knows that the illusory self has to be dismantled before the true self emerges. This is achieved by purification of the heart, the center of your being. This purification is achieved by the remembrance of Allah. The transformation of the heart only occurs by the grace of Allah. This purification and this transformation of the heart in the inward can only take place if there is a corresponding purification and transformation in the outward, that is, in your existential behavior pattern. The only way of life which today makes this inward and outward purification a possibility, and for the one who follows it, a reality, is the way of Muhammad. May Allah bless him and grant him peace. This is the means by which, once the heart has been purified, one knows oneself and one's Lord, and these two knowings are the same knowing. In reality, the knower, the known, and the knowledge are one. To gain this knowledge, it is necessary to stop thinking altogether, which means that the one who has this knowledge cannot be trapped by the educational and media conditioning processes, since this conditioning is only successful where the thought process has been attracted, harnessed, and programmed. There is no deep reality to the kafir psychologists' definitions of what normal is. They are arbitrary definitions. Deep sanity is to affirm the reality of Allah, and this affirmation finds its fullest expression in the one who follows the prophetic lifestyle. This lifestyle finds its fullest expression in the way of the Prophet Muhammad. May the blessings and peace of Allah be on him, the first and last of the prophets in the prophetic cycle. His way is its own proof. The one who follows it benefits from a healthy body and a peaceful heart, and the tranquility which comes with real knowledge. The ignorance of the leaders of the kafir medical profession today is evidenced by the fact that they do not have the cures for the physiological and psychological ills which are the natural result of the consumer-producer process and the lifestyle which comes with it. They concentrate more on the ailments once they have manifested than on the original cause of it having manifested in the first place. From one viewpoint, life is like a chemical equation, given certain ingredients and certain conditions. The result which follows is inevitable. If you follow the kafir lifestyle, you will be in turmoil and are for the fire. If you follow the way of the prophets, you will be at peace and are for the garden. The Quran is the only book on the face of the earth today which contains all the equations. It is the A to Z of existence, and in it is a guidance which shows you what to do in every situation. The Prophet Muhammad, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, said that in the Quran there is a medicine, so make what you need from it.